Your SCS 502 instructor, and today I wanted to review a few things about variables and experimental design that I think might help to put everything together for you. There are a lot of times these are just concepts that are discussed separately, and I wanted to kind of create a bridge between them. And I wanted to start with the hypothesis. The hypothesis of any kind of research is the foundation, is the base. I really encourage you to practice putting all of the hypotheses using the if-then statement, as it really helps you identify what the independent and dependent variables are in any given study. As a review, the dependent variable is the variable that's being measured. So for example, if you wanted to take a look at stress level in students who are teaching on or who are taking online classes versus classes at a brick and mortar, the stress level is the dependent variable. It's the thing that's being measured. The independent variable is the variable that you expect to influence it, or in the cases of experiment, it's the variable that's being manipulated, and to see whether or not it has an impact on the dependent variable. So in my example, the online versus brick and mortar aspect is the independent variable. If a student is teaching or learning online, then their stress level will be higher. Factorial design is often complicated, but it doesn't really need to be. The factors are simply the number of independent variables that are in a study. So going back to this slide, remember the independent variable are the variables that are expected to influence the dependent variable. So how, if you include more than one, let's say it's not just whether or not they're doing online versus brick and mortar, but let's say we're also taking a look at whether or not somebody has children or doesn't have children. So those are two different independent variables that may impact stress level. Then that already is a two factorial design, 2 by 2 actually. Another example is whether or not gender, being male or female, has an impact on stress level, or that in this case, it's a 2 by 2 because there are two levels of the independent variable. There are two levels of gender, male versus female, two levels of type of student, online versus brick and mortar. It will change depending, that number of factorial design will change depending on how many levels there are. So if you're taking a look at the impact of gender and impact of cracker choice on the hunger level, then you're taking a look at a 2 by 3 factorial design because there are 3 levels of crackers: wheat thins, saltines, and Ritz. To make this a little bit more complicated, in each of these instances, these were all between subjects variables. That means that in the example previously, you cannot be male and female. You have to be one or the other, and therefore that's a between subjects variable. Each participant is only in one level of the independent variable. Same thing with the type of student, online versus brick and mortar. Each student is only in one level of that independent variable. It can either be online or brick and mortar, not both. And therefore, this is a between subjects design. But when you change it so that the participants are in both levels or all the levels of the independent variable, that's within subjects design. So taking a look at learning ability with music, and you're assigning each student to listen to classical music, rock music, and pop music, and taking a look at between subjects design, either online or brick and mortar, it's a mixed design. So there are 3 levels of music, 2 levels of students. The music is a within subjects design. However, between subjects design is for the online and brick and mortar. That means that all the students who are teaching or who are learning online will listen to classical music, then take a test, listen to rock music, then take a test, listen to pop music, then take a test. And it will compare whether or not they do better listening to a specific type of music. There's also the idea between a true experiment and a quasi-experiment. The difference is minute in the sense of there's only one really big difference between the two. However, it's a huge difference in terms of looking at validity and letting confounds enter the experiment. In a true experiment, you have all the participants are randomly assigned to the levels of the independent variable. So that means if I'm taking a look at, for example, people who are depressed, whether or not they are do better with therapy or without therapy, then I will randomly assign each person to either the control group or the therapy group and see whether or not their depression improves. It's a simple experiment because it's only one level of independent variable, or one independent variable, one dependent variable. And it's a true experiment because all the participants are randomly assigned. However, you can't always use random assignment when, for example, it's unethical. So taking a look at opioid use and birth defects with pregnant women, it would be highly unethical to ask somebody who is actively using opioids to become pregnant simply for the purposes of an experiment. And therefore, you would not randomly assign participants to the independent variable or either level of the independent variable. You would just take and people or women who are pregnant and look at the impact of the use on birth defects. Hopefully this video kind of connects some of the pieces together. I hope you learned something today, and I also encourage you to come back in a couple weeks and review it. If you're reviewing this video early on in the term, it will make a little bit more sense towards week 7 or so. As always, reach out to me and have a wonderful day. Thank you.